What's up everyone? Joseph here. In this video, we're going to take a look at the grammar that is on page 93 of the book. That's page 93 on unit 14, comparisons with adjectives. Now we talked about this in a previous video, in a previous unit. I believe it was unit 3. Talk about comparisons with adjectives, but only between two objects. We're going to talk about comparisons between more than two objects. If you want to take a look at that video, I'm going to leave a link here so you can take a look. Okay, let's begin. So we use comparatives and superlatives to compare people, objects, animals, or ideas. Comparative adjectives are the ones we use to compare two objects. Superlatives are the ones we use to compare more than two objects. So three or more. So let's take a look. We have three objects here. A large ball. Okay, this is a large ball. So this is a larger ball. This ball is larger than this one. Okay, this ball is larger than this one. This is a comparison between these two objects, this ball and this ball. Okay, but we have another ball here. And this ball is larger than this ball. Okay? So if we compare this and this ball, this one is larger. And if we compare this ball with this ball, well, this one is larger than this. But between the three, this is the largest ball. If I compare the three objects, the three balls, this ball is the largest ball. This is just, I'm using here the superlative. We're going to take a look at that now. So when we compare two things, or people, or animals, or ideas, anything really, we use comparative adjectives, like we explained some seconds ago. When we compare two things, or people, or whatever, we use comparative adjectives. For example, which one is bigger, the first or the second ball? Well, the second ball is larger than the first ball. Which one is bigger, the second ball or the third ball? Well, the third ball is bigger than the second ball. Which one is bigger, Mao or Santiago? Well, Santiago, excuse me. Santiago is bigger than Mao. Here we are comparing two things in each sentence. So when we compare more than two things or people or whatever, we use superlative adjectives. Which one is the largest, the first, the second, or the third ball? Well, the third ball is the largest one. What city is the most populated in the Dominican Republic? So I'm making a comparison between all the cities in the Dominican Republic. What city is the most populated? Well, Santo Domingo is the most populated city in the Dominican Republic. So take a look at this. Well, I don't have to mention all the objects involved in the comparison. If I mention all the objects in a group, well, I'm making a comparison between all the objects in that group. I don't have to mention, imagine if I started mentioning city by city. Okay, which city is the most populated Dominican Republic? Santo Domingo, Santiago, Puerto Plata, San Francisco, and blah, blah, blah. Until the last one. No, I don't have to mention all of the cities. I just have to say, I just have to mention the group. Santo Domingo is the most populated city in the Dominican Republic. You can use comparatives or superlatives without repeating the noun. I don't have to repeat the noun when I say the response. For example, which country is larger, Canada or China? Canada is larger. I could say then China if I wish, but it's okay if I also say Canada is larger. Which country is larger, Canada or China? Canada is larger. I don't have to mention then China because people already know that you're talking about that. What's the coldest region in the world? The Antarctic is the coldest. I don't have to say region in the world. I don't have to mention that if I don't want to. The Antarctic is the coldest. Or I just have to say the Antarctic. Or the Antarctic is. I can use any of those answers. So, so how to create comparative adjectives? To compare, we use adjective modified plus then. So adjective modified and then. So it's in this case, in this picture, Pedro is happier than Carlos. We see Pedro smiling here, and Carlos is like he is serious. Pedro is happier than Carlos. The adjective modified, happier, and then Pedro is adjective modified than Carlos. Oh my God, excuse me. So we see some adjectives here. Modified, lighter, nicer, and prettier. These adjectives are referring to light, nice, and pretty. And these are more than modified. And these adjectives, you only have to write more at the beginning, before the adjectives, excuse me. You don't have to add er at the end of these adjectives because they have more than two syllables. So the difference is in the syllables that the word has. So you add er to adjectives with one or two syllables. Okay, for example, here, lighter. The adjective was light, so we add er at the end. The adjective was nice. We add an r because we already have an e. And pretty, you just have to erase the y and add ier. Prettier. And you put more before adjectives with more than two syllables. For example, expensive, stylish, and beautiful. They all have more than two syllables. So we add more before the adjective. So some rules for adding er. You add er to most adjectives. For example, small. You just have to add er at the end. This ball is smaller than that one. To adjectives ending in consonants, plus y. You change the y to I and add er. For example, pretty, prettier. That woman is prettier than the other one. Sorry. I'm not going to take much time explaining this because I already talked about this in the last video. So if you wanna a more complete explanation, you can go to the video I linked earlier. So to adjectives ending in e, just add r. For example, nice, nicer, strange, stranger. That man is stranger than this one. A quick note here. Remember that in English, these syllables are defined by the sound, by the pronunciation of the word. It doesn't matter if it looks like it has more syllables. It's not like in Spanish that the syllables are defined by the written form. In English, it's defined by the sound. For example, strange. Strange, it only has one syllable because it only has Like that, like the sound strange can be said in one stress. So um, that's another difference between Spanish and English. Strange has only one syllable. Uh, so so let's continue with the video. So two adjectives that end in one vowel plus consonant, double the last consonant and add er. For example, big. We double the consonant here and add er. So it ends in vowel plus consonant. Fat, fatter. Thin, thinner. So adjectives with more than two syllables, we just have to add more before the adjective. Important, more important, interesting, more interesting. Popular, more popular. There are some irregular adjectives in which these rules don't apply. So, for example, good. Um, the comparative adjective is better. I'm better than yesterday. Bad is worse. Mondays are worse than Saturdays. Okay, so now to create a superlative comparison, use the definitive article da. So we have to use da before the superlative. For example, Russia is the largest country in the world. So we write the definitive article da before the superlative. Russia is the largest country in the world. USA is the richest country in the world. The, again, the before the superlative. So, when the adjective has only one syllable or two syllables ending in y, so one syllable or two syllables ending in y, use the, of course, the definitive article the adjective, you add est at the end plus the noun you are modifying. For example, Yaque del Norte is the, remember the superlative, the definite article, excuse me. Yaque del Norte is the longest. So you can see long est river. So we have the definite article, the adjective, est, and the noun, river. And the adjective we use is long. Yaque del Norte is the longest river. This is the prettiest lake. The, the, the definitive article, pretty, modified, est, and the noun, modified. We use pretty. When the adjective has two or more syllables, two syllables, let's write here that don't end in y, right? It's better to write that here. Two that don't end in y or more syllables, use the most. So we have to write the definite article there, most plus the adjective plus the noun modified. For example, India is the most crowded. This is the adjective crowded, the noun modified, and in the world. So, because remember, when we compare with superlatives, we are comparing in more than two nouns. Duarte 36 is the most, the article, most, in this case, yes, most, we have to use most with more than, with an adjective, when an adjective that has more than two syllables. Expensive, expensive, the adjective. Restaurant, email. So the article, again, the definite article, most, the adjective, the noun modified, and other things. We're gonna call that complement. So here are um, some comparisons between the adjectives modified to compare two objects, and the adjectives modified to compare more than two objects. The comparative and superlative. Long, longer, the longest. Large, larger, the largest, and so on. So, before we continue, I want to point out that these rules that modify these adjectives, adding er to most adjectives, um, ending in consonant plus y, change the y, and those that end in e, add an r. They also apply to these the superlative adjectives. They also apply to them. To add to add est at the end. So when we create questions, for creating questions, we use what or which to create questions asking for comparisons. What if you're not mentioning the things you're comparing? Which if you mention them. So we use which if you're comparing two things. Oh, that's the most common form of comparing two things, using which. For example, which one is easier to learn, English or Spanish? Which one is easier to learn, is English or Spanish? You can also say which language, for example, here. Here's an answer. English is easier. You can say to learn here, but it's not necessary. English is easier. So we use which if you're comparing more than two things and you mention them. Which one is the easiest language to learn? English, Spanish, or Japanese? Well, English is the easiest language to learn. We don't have to write this here, a language to learn. You only have to say English is the easiest. So we use what if you're comparing more than two things and you don't mention them. For example, what is the easiest language to learn in the world? And of course, I'm not going to mention the 6,000 languages that exist on the planet Earth here. So, what's the easiest language to learn in the world? English is the easiest. Between all the languages in the world, English is the easiest. But of course, that's my opinion. I obviously there are probably easier languages to learn that I don't know about. So that is the end of the video. I will see you on the next one.